Dear Lord, we put all this under your care, the technology and the speaker, Lord. We know that you've given us the role of helping your young people to be pure and holy and loving for you, loving each other. And Lord, Helen has been doing this her whole life. She's been helping young people, and you've given her many insights and many skill and much grace to know how to do this well. And she's going to share that with us today, Lord. Thank you, and thank you. Give her the grace to share that powerfully with us. But as we take this mission on also, continue the mission that you've given us to help your young people to be pure and holy and loving in a true and good way. Thank you, Lord. We praise you, we love you, and we ask your help and we know that you are helping all of us, Lord. Amen.
Helen is a registered nurse. She earned her bachelor's degree at Loyola University, and she had an interest in postpartum issues that led her into pregnancy counseling. And she's been doing pregnancy counseling for 28 years in the ILS Pregnancy Counseling Center in Mission Hills in the San Fernando Valley in California. And her topic today is entitled One Woman's Attempt to Stamp Out Teen Sex in the San Fernando Valley. So Helen, please, we're pleased to have you, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Yes, I am going to share with you the story of one woman's attempt to stamp out teen sex in the San Fernando Valley. Once upon a time, in the magical kingdom of Mission Hills, California, in the early 1990s, I became a counselor at the Pregnancy Counseling Center. And it wasn't very long, maybe a year or two of counseling, when I realized that I wasn't accomplishing what I wanted to. I was very frustrated with the clients, and I kept thinking, didn't they know that this would happen to them? Didn't anybody explain to them the risks and the consequences of sexual activity before marriage? And so I decided, since it seemed like nobody was, that I would take that on. And I decided that I would go to the schools and tell them what was ahead of them. And I would tell them stories about my own clients so that they would realize the veracity of what I was saying. Now, the title for my program is The New Virginity, and I took that from the cover of Newsweek magazine, in which they had an article about why teens were choosing not to have sex. And for my goal of my program, what I would like to happen is for the teens to ask for this pledge that I made up for them at the end of the presentation. And the pledge looks like this, and it reads, I will wait. I know that my virginity is a gift I give one time to only one person. I pledge to give my virginity on my wedding day to the love of my life, my future spouse. I am worth waiting for. They sign it, date it, and save it. I roll them up into this form like a diploma, like they've graduated, so that they can keep it. Now, as I tell you what I present to the students, I'm also going to give you an idea of how they receive the message. And I do that with this. It's an audience feedback form that I hand to the teachers to hand out to the students after I've finished my presentation. And then they eventually send it to me. And what it amounts to is there's no name on it, so it's anonymous. I wanted them to be completely honest with whatever they said. But they put down whether they're male or female and what their age is. And then they answer the question, before this presentation, I was inclined to, and it's wait for sex, didn't know, not to wait for sex. And then the next part is, after this presentation, I have decided to wait for sex. Don't know not to wait for sex. And most of the things that I quote from the feedback will be the answer to the question, what impressed you the most about this presentation? So the stories that I tell them, and I tell them true stories about either my clients at the center or news stories that I am familiar with, or something from my personal experience. And I think that's what gives my presentation some credence, because they know I'm talking about people who have suffered consequences in real life. And frankly, I tell them that my clients at the center have tasted the forbidden fruit and they've gotten a bellyache from it. Now, right away, I would like to address the elephant in the room, and that is, how do teens respond to someone of my venerable 82 years of age speaking to them about sex? Well, first of all, I'm not talking about my sex life. That would be a short subject. I'm talking about my clients. And I think they realize that. And what I also do is to bring along guest speakers who are considerably younger. One of them was a counselor at the center, and she had a story to tell them about, at the age of 16, her mother forcing her to have a back alley abortion. Another one of them was a young man who shared with him his story about how, at the age of 16, when he first became sexually active, his life took a terrible downhill spiral. He became so obsessed with sex that he failed at school. He was expelled from high school. He was eventually kicked out of his home, and his whole life was a disaster until he joined the Marines as a paramedic. And then he started to make a comeback to have a good life again. And he shares this all with the boys. Another one of them was a lovely, sweet 22-year-old virgin who was a very successful model and who had a devoted boyfriend. And she would simply tell the girls how good it is to be a virgin and to be well loved and respected and to be successful. And she just was an ideal model of virginity. And then I had another counselor join me who was pregnant at 18, and she decided to give birth to the baby and raise him, and she tells her story. And then the last woman that I had going with me to the schools was a 43-year-old woman who had a life fraught with problems and disappointments and unfulfilled dreams, loss of faith, and she attributed it all to the fact that she started becoming sexually active at 15. And she led a life of promiscuity and faithlessness, and it was sex-fueled and very unhappy and very disappointing to her. And she had recently converted, come back to the Catholic religion, became celibate and full of faith, and she contrasts the life before celibacy and after celibacy, and it was a very moving one. And I would like to mention some of the feedbacks on the methods that I use. And this is some of the comments on my methods. From a female, she says, how the speakers seem to understand us and walk in our shoes. And this one, the speaker was honest and truthful. She didn't shy away from the topic. And I liked how she spoke to us as if we were adults. And this one, how touching some of the stories were and how comfortable and relaxed the speaker made me feel. Now, the thing about the age is that the one complaint I did get about the age was a young boy that said that she's just too old to be talking about sex. And then, but a girl also said she wasn't cheesy or old or awkward about this, not all preachy, and she was funny. Now, I started out with high schools, and I did get some good successes in the high schools, and I'll read some of the feedback from the high school students. 16-year-old female says, the topic she brought up was actually relevant to our age group. I've heard all the talks before, and it never fazed me because I thought I could just get an abortion and get it over with. But now I know that there isn't an easy way out of a pregnancy. When she said that you can give your virginity to one person, I thought long and hard about when to have sex. And this one, I really appreciated the talk because I went to my boyfriend after, and we were both relieved that we were not sexually involved. And this one, I didn't feel judged or looked down upon. I have engaged in sexual conduct, and I don't feel the need to ever do it again. That may be a little bit of an oversell. And this one, she was so truthful. She gave me a way to say no. I usually have trouble saying no, but her excuse gave me a really good way. She really inspired me to stay a virgin until I get married. And the reason I didn't continue with the high schools is because I found that the students were a little bit too cocky and a little bit too know-it-all, and they seemed to grasp the presentation with some doubt. In fact, one of the girls said in her feedback, what impressed me the most about Mrs. Rossi was the lipstick on her teeth. Well, that kind of discouraged me. So I decided that I would go to the younger age group. And I went to the junior high schools after that, the 7th and 8th graders. And I was also able to separate the sexes there, because there's very different motivations that you need to offer boys than to offer girls. In fact, my approach to the boys is this. It's based on a quote from the German writer Goethe. And he says, if you treat an individual as though he were what he ought to be, could be, he will become what he should be. Now, the boys are a little wary of this subject matter. They're afraid they're going to be embarrassed. And I had one boy said that what impressed him the most about my presentation was, quote, how I could live through it, unquote. But I tell them about my male clients at the Pregnancy Counseling Center. And I say, when I see these young men cooling their heels in the waiting room, waiting to find out if they have become fathers and if their whole lives have changed, I wonder, didn't they know this would happen? Did they really think that sex was only for recreation and had no idea that it was also for procreation? And I tell the boys that I don't want them to be in the position of my clients. I want to give them the information that my clients apparently didn't have. And I tell them that they need to be complimented, that their principal has brought me to their school to talk to them. Because obviously the principal did not believe in the saying, boys will be boys, which means there's nothing you can do about a boy to stop him from having sex. And I say, you've got to be complimented that your principal thought that if you knew the risks and the consequences of becoming sexually active, that you might make a better choice for yourself. And you might act more wisely. And I tell them, it isn't your sex drive that's the problem. It is letting sex drive you. I really want these boys to think with their big head instead of their small head. I tell them stories about condoms that have failed, because I know that's in the back of their minds, that, oh, as long as I use a condom, I can have all the sex I want. But I tell them 2 stories about condom failure. And I also talk to them about having a girl on the pill and how that is not a safe way to assume that you'll never pay the consequences of sex. Now, I tell the boys that sexually active teens are losers. And I tell them what there is to lose. First of all, there's a loss of youth. And I show this by showing a marvelous video about a young man named Jeremy, a very likable young man that I know that they're going to identify with. He's a senior in high school, and he made a big mistake. He got his sophomore girlfriend pregnant. But he says in the video, he says, I determined I would not do what my father did. My own father deserted my mother during her pregnancy with me and never did any parenting or any help to the mother at all. And I determined that I would never do that to anybody. And he didn't. He moved in with the girlfriend's family. And instead of, be part of a sports team or something after school, he just had to go to a fast food restaurant where he had to earn a living for his new family. And it shows the stresses of working all afternoon and evening, going to school during the daytime, not getting enough rest because the baby is crying at night, and just how this couple really have a hard life, not the sort of life that young people should have. And at the end of the video, I asked my boys, would you like to have Jeremy's life? And they resoundingly respond, no way. No way do I want that poor guy's life. And the other loss of freedom that I talk to them about, is the loss of freedom. And I tell them 2 very shocking stories about young men who were convicted of sex crimes. One, it was just oral sex, and the other one was falsely accused of rape, and how instead of having a brilliant future that looked like they would have, they were football players that were being recruited by colleges for football scholarships. Instead of that, they went to prison. So their whole life was ruined by their choice of having sex. The other loss I talk to them about is the loss of health. And I remind them of the story of Magic Johnson finding out that he was HIV positive. And I tell them that when he broke the news to his teammates in the locker room, all of them were worried that they would suffer the same fate and made appointments to get an HIV test themselves, except for one. One of his teammates had no worry whatever that he would suffer the fate of Magic Johnson. His name was A.C. Green. And the reason that he had no concern was that he was a virgin. Now, A.C. Green earned the title of Iron Man of the NBA because he played basketball for 15 years without ever missing a game. And he has been a sexual abstinence speaker throughout the country. And he did keep his virginity until at the age of 37, he married. And he gave his virginity to the only person that he ever wanted to have it, and that was his wife. Now, the other thing we do to explore the world of STDs is to play what I call the hot fruit game. I have 5 pieces of plastic fruit that I toss to the boys and tell them to toss the fruit to each other. And I give them a few minutes to make sure everybody gets a chance to toss the fruit. And then I collect the fruit and then I say, who touched the orange? Well, you all contracted syphilis. Who touched the apple? You all are now HIV positive. Who touched the pear? You all now have chlamydia. So they catch on right away how easy it is to contract a sexually transmitted disease. In fact, this one boy in his feedback wrote, "What I learned today was you can get gonorrhea from a nectarine." Now, this I don't share with the boys, but I will share with you. The other loss is loss of life. Did you realize that it is 9 times more likely that a sexually active teenage boy will commit suicide than a sexually abstinent boy? Quite a shocking statistic, which proves that there is no condom for the heart. Now, I tell the boys that they're fortunate to have a woman talk to them about sex, because I'm going to give them some inside tips on girls. And one of the tips is, don't assume that the girl wants to have sex with you just because of the physical satisfaction. She may have mixed motives that you are not privy to at all. And I tell them stories about women who had sex for very different reasons than simply the physical satisfaction that cause a lot of trouble for their partners. And I tell them that, women having a sexual relationship, we really expect that he'll never want anybody else. Most of my clients say that they've had sex in order to keep their boyfriend. And so they expect faithfulness from him. They don't expect him to dump them and go on to another sex partner. They expect that will cause them to be faithful for life. So I warn them that, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, that they lose their ability to be free agents in the dating world when they start having a sexual relationship with a girl. I tell them the statistic that is quite shocking, that 2,250 teenage girls get pregnant every day in this country. That scares them, I'll have to tell you that. And my theory about why so many teenagers get pregnant is because they're not aware that, biologically speaking, when a girl is ovulating, that's when she's most interested in sex. The dominant hormones at that time of month cause her to really want to have sex. And I showed them the example of a dog or a cat in heat. When they're in heat, which means that they're going to get pregnant if they have sex, they are receptive to anybody in the neighborhood who wants to have sex with them. And you've got to keep them in the house. So I tell them that I will hope that when you've been dating a girl and maybe you've been trying to get her to have sex with you, and she's been saying, no, I'm a virgin, I'm not going to do that. Then one night, all of a sudden, she's willing and she's ready to throw all caution to the wind and have sex with you. I really hope that this light bulb goes off in your mind that says, wait a minute, why is she interested in having sex tonight? Remember, it could be because she's ovulating. And if you have sex with her that night, she'll get pregnant. Now, I show the boys 3 videos. One is called Window to the Womb, which a lot of you may be familiar with. It is a video of a sonogram that shows a developing fetus, because I want them very aware that when a girl is pregnant, she is carrying a person in her body. Then I tell them about the early surgical abortion procedure, and I show them the video after the choice, a video of several women who years previously have had abortions, and tell about the experience of having the abortion and how it has haunted them all these years and has caused them a great deal of remorse and unhappiness. Because I tell them, God forbid you should get a girl pregnant someday, and she may say to you, I'm going to get an abortion because that's a good thing for me. I want you yourself to understand this is not a good thing. This is something that will hurt her a great deal, and you will not go along with it because you think that she's right about being a good thing. Now, here are some of the feedbacks that I get from the boys. The talk really scared me straight. I will not put a girl into a situation where she would have an abortion. And the presentation that only safe sex is saved sex. You changed my life. And this one, he learned how complex sex is in reality, as opposed to how it is portrayed in society and social media. And the speaker saved my virginity. And I put a lot of thought into it, and it was very meaningful and empowering. And this one, you've changed my mind. I will wait until marriage, because why lose your dreams to one foolish mistake? Now, with the girls' presentation, my inspiration comes from a book named Prude, How Our Sex-Obsessed Culture Has Damaged Girls. And this is the quote, so-called sexual freedom is really just proclaiming oneself available for free, and therefore without value. To choose such freedom is saying one is worthless. I start out with a metaphor about a fireplace. I tell them that this couple wants to spend an evening together, and they just want a romantic, intimate evening, and they cuddle on the couch, and they light candles for candlelight, and they have soft music playing, and there's a fireplace in the room, so they build a fire, and they have a lovely, romantic, ideal evening that they truly enjoy. But then there's another couple who want exactly the same kind of an evening. They have the soft lighting, they have the soft music, they have the couch, but there is no fireplace in their room. But they say to one another, we want everything the other couple has, and we're going to make it happen. So they build a fire on the carpet next to the couch. Well, I say to the students, what's going to happen? And they say, they're going to burn up. Yes, exactly, they're going to burn up. And then I tell them that the fire is the sex act. Tell me what the fireplace represents. So I get all kinds of guesses, and it usually takes quite a while. But eventually somebody comes up with the right answer. Of course, the fireplace is marriage. And I say, absolutely. That is the one appropriate, blessed, happy place to have sex. Nobody gets burned. Now, one of my favorite stories is about two 17-year-olds that came into the pregnancy counseling center one day. And the young girl said to me, can you give me a referral for a gynecologist because I'm not having my periods? Well, you know what I'm thinking? I said, why don't I give you a pregnancy test? She said, oh, I can't be pregnant. I'm thinking, why does she think she can't be pregnant? Well, maybe he's faithful about using condoms. And maybe they didn't realize one night it slipped off, or it broke, or it was defective in the first place. Or maybe she's on the birth control pill and doesn't realize that she didn't take it one day, or that she was on some medication that prevents it from being protective. I said, indulge me. Let me do the test and we'll go from there. So I did the pregnancy test, and it was negative. And of course I said, how did you know for sure you weren't pregnant? Well, she gave the obvious answer, obvious to anybody but a pregnancy counseling center counselor. And she said, I'm not having sex. Oh, I said, I never thought of that. I said, you're so in love. And she said, well, I'll tell you the truth. We did do it one time. And we were so scared that I'd gotten pregnant. And my boyfriend came to me and he said, you know, I really do love you. And because I love you, I care about what happens to you. I know you want to graduate from high school. You want to go to college. You want to have a career for a while before you start a family. And because I love you, I want you to have what you want in your future. Therefore, there's not going to be any more sex between us until we're married. Well, I said to her, oh, how lucky you are. And I asked my students, why did I think she was so lucky? And they all get the right answer. Because he showed he really did love her. And I tell them, that's the difference between lust, which is selfish, and love, which is unselfish. What do you want? Do you want to be the victim of a predator, or do you want to be the cherished love of a protector? That's your choice. And if a guy comes to you with this old saying, if you love me, you would give me sex. Your answer is obvious. It's simply, if you love me, you wouldn't even be asking. Please remember, you are the one at greater risk here. Now, I had shared with them the story that a Birmingham high school girl shared with me after my presentation there. She was so happy. She rushed up to me. She said, oh, Mrs. Rossi, you're so right. I have to tell you my story. She said, I've had my eye on this particular boy that I really wanted from my boyfriend for a long time. Finally, he noticed me and we started dating 3 months ago. And she said, I had a secret from him that I was afraid to tell him because I thought he would leave me once he knew. She said, but last night, I finally got up the courage and I told him my secret. That secret is, I am a virgin and I intend to keep my virginity until marriage. So our relationship is not going to escalate into a sexual phase. So she said you couldn't believe his reaction. He was thrilled. He said, oh, that makes me love you so much more and makes me treasure you. And I will be your protector of your virginity. You can trust me with that. And she was just so happy about it. So that's what I share with the girls, is that truly the fact that you're unattainable makes you so much more desirable. Everybody wants what they can't have. And that's what they need to do. And then I shared with them a game that I played with the elementary boys health class. I had them do a mind game with me. I said, think of a perfect girl in your mind, the prettiest girl, the best personality, smartest girl, someone that really exists. And keep that in your mind and pretend that your friend came up to you and said, oh, I know you think Cindy is really hot, but did you know that Cindy is sleeping with Tommy? And then I say to the boys, now what do you think about Cindy? Well, they didn't mince any words at all. They said things like, oh, she's sleazy. Oh, she's a slut. Oh, she's dirty. Oh, I don't like her anymore. She's a hoe. Except for one boy. One boy in the last row. He said something different. And I said, what do you think about Cindy? And he said, well, that's all right. Now she'll sleep with me too. Now the girls are really shocked that he would make that assumption. And I say, you know, that is some of the thinking. If you'll sleep with one guy, you'll sleep with any guy. So then the expression on this boy's face changed, though. His face fell. And I said, what's your second thought about Cindy? And he said something that I tell the girls, I want you to always remember this. He said, I'm disappointed. Okay. Now, the video, the first video that I showed the girls is of Hannah. And this is a marvelous video about, it's a real life story about a girl named Hannah who was the, she was the homecoming queen, and her boyfriend was the homecoming king, and they were really on top of the world. They were the most popular couple in high school, and things were really going great with them. But they made the mistake of having sex, and Hannah got pregnant. And what's interesting about this story, though, is that Hannah wasn't pregnant with just one baby. Hannah was pregnant with triplets. She had 3 little babies growing in her uterus, this 18-year-old high school girl. She was having a whole family. And what Hannah says repeatedly in this video is that her whole life has changed. And yet his life is the same. He doesn't have to do anything different. He goes on with his life. The only thing he has to do differently is he has to get a different date for the prom. And it shows him at the prom with another girl. And he has simply walked away from this whole situation. And she says, we both did the same thing. Why is my whole life changed? My whole future different, and his isn't. And it really brings home the lesson that the girls take the greater risk. And then I explained to them how the nature of the male figures into this so much, and that they really have to understand the nature of the male in order to protect themselves. And what it is this: males are very competitive. And that's why they like sports so much. And they don't play different sports games just to play the game. They want to win. It's really important that they win. And then I say to the girls, now, in the game between the sexes, what do you think a win is? And they know without a doubt that it's when they have sex, that's the win. And I said, yeah, yes. I said, in fact, young men refer to that as scoring. And they feel like they have scored with you when they've taken you to bed. And they have won that game. But the problem is, girls, after he's won the game is over. And he may not want to play that game with you again. He'll want to play it with someone else, because it's very much of an ego enhancement for him to have many girls that he can score with. And so the quickest way to lose your boyfriend could be to have sex with him. And that game is over for you. And then I asked them, what price do you think virginity is? And they'll say all kinds of different things. And somebody will always say, oh, it's priceless. And I said, no, it's not priceless. There is a price for your virginity. But that price is someone's life. And it's only the man who promises you his whole life in the marriage ceremony that is paying the true price of your virginity. It's only one person who will ever receive that gift. It has to be someone who has paid that price. And then I show them the same videos that I've showed the boys as far as the window to the womb, so that they will understand the same thing about the baby. And then after the choice, so they will understand the price that they will have to pay if they choose an abortion. And then I have extra videos for them which have to do with oral sex. And one of the videos is boys talking about girls who have oral sex and saying very uncomplimentary things about them, how they think that they are slutty and easy and dirty, and that they don't respect them at all, and they're not grateful at all that they would do this for them. And then the other video is about the girls who've given oral sex and other sorts of sexual activity, and how they've lost their respect for themselves, and how they so much regret that they have ever given away something that was so valuable. And so that was, that's what they have to say. Now, here's some feedback from the girls. This one said, I was impressed that there were guys in the world that will wait with you. I will never have an abortion. And this one, the way men think differently than women. Also, that abortion isn't a quick thing. It is something that will haunt you for the rest of your life. And sex will hurt you emotionally and physically. Save it for someone you love after marriage. And this really changed my mind about everything. This presentation was excellent. It truly made me realize that if I was truly loved and cared about by my boyfriend, I wouldn't be pressured. And the consequences of having sex at an early age can affect your future for your whole life. If I find the right guy, he would wait until marriage. Well, that completes my presentation. And if there's any questions, I'm happy to have them.
Thank you very much, Helen. Does anyone have any questions or comments or input? Well, I do then. Helen, do you, I mean, I think the answer is in some way evident from your presentation, but can you address positive messages as opposed to negative? Meaning, so there's a negative message or negative approach, and negative not in the sense of it's bad, but as to the subject matter negative, are the harmful consequences of premarital or extramarital sex. And a positive message would be one of the benefits of living in purity and innocence. Do you see them as separate approaches, and could you address how that works?
Well, what I say to the boys is that it's easy to go along with the societal influences. And in fact, one of my favorite quotes is from G.K. Chesterton, and he says, even a dead thing can flow with the current, but it takes a live thing to swim against it. And I say to the boys, are you dead or alive?
Right.
And that a girl is so impressed by a young man that isn't pushing her for sex, that she will consider him of a very high character, and she will so appreciate his respect for her, and she will think of him as someone who is really worthwhile and is different from what you expect from the run-of-the-mill sex-driven male.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question or a comment?
Yes, I do, Marianne Buchter. Helen, you spoke of a film about Hannah. What was the name of that film?
Well, it was an ABC news video, and it's just called Hannah. But it's the theme of the program was babies having babies, and it was about teenage sex. And I was able to send for it, and it also had the Jeremy video on it too, Hannah and Jeremy. And there's two other young people whose stories is on the video. But it's very many years old, I have to admit. But it was on the newscast, and then I was able to have them send it to me.
Thank you so much. It was a very good presentation. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. Well, you're talking about going into the school systems, and I'm wondering if this is parochial school or public school or both.
Well, that's part of my history. I started out with all schools, but I found out with the public schools that I was at the mercy of the teacher of the class. If they happened to be pro-choice, I was in bad shape, and I was real invited not to come back to one health teacher's class because he said, I think abortion is good and you're telling him it's bad, And so I decided I was going to play it easy on myself, and I decided I'm going to go someplace where they're all supposed to believe that abortion is bad, and that's the Catholic school system. And even if a particular teacher would not be of that philosophy, they're not likely to mention it to their principal. So I pretty much concentrated on the Catholic schools. And at first, and this is like 25 plus years ago, they were a little reticent about letting a stranger come in and talk to their students about such a sensitive topic. But I find that the people that were most receptive to bringing me in were nuns that were principals, which I find it kind of interesting. The male principals were the most reluctant to have me come in. But I had gone to about 35 of the schools in San Fernando Valley eventually. And so once I convinced them of my credulity, and I think it had to do with the pregnancy counseling center, I was okay with that. I was able to get my program into the schools.
Thank you. Jenny, yeah, go ahead.
Yes, I had a question. Actually, what Anne asked was my exact question. So I have another one. Do you ever go to Catholic churches at all and speak there for like youth groups or things of that nature?
Yes, I did I did go to the confirmation classes.
Okay.
But I'm sorry, I ran into trouble with them the way I did in high school. The kids were not as receptive. They really thought they knew the answer, and they weren't as open to my propositions as the younger children are. So it was the age that was not good. And to some of the my own parish church, I ran into the most pro-choice girls that I have ever encountered in their confirmation class. It was really discouraging, and I just felt I'm just a little too late. They've they're too far gone already.
Yeah. Because I've heard that from another pregnancy center that churches are unfortunately a lot of times closed-minded to it. I guess it could be for any number of reasons, and I didn't know if you had any experience of getting into churches or what you did, but okay. So it's mainly the younger children at the Catholic schools that you're able to talk to. Okay.
Well, and the other thing that happened to me too is in the early years, I ran into a young student in a confirmation class that had already heard me when he was in the 7th grade, and then again in the 8th grade, and this was the 3rd time he'd heard from me, and he said, I've had enough of Helen Rossi. So then I said, whoops, I better stay with the young kids and not follow them through the years.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed your presentation.
Oh, the other thing about the confirmation classes is it's difficult for them to separate the sexes. You know, they usually have just one meeting room and you have to talk to them together. And I truly enjoy having them separate and just telling them an inside story about the opposite sex. So that was another thing that was frustrating for me. Any other questions?
By the way, I loved your presentation. It was wonderful, and
Oh, thank you.
how you spoke beautifully. And I was wondering if you found it more successful, or did you ever speak with parents before you spoke to their children?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that question. There is one school in the Valley that's had me come for about 23 years, St. John Eudes, and their principal thought that I should tell the parents what I was going to tell the children a week before I spoke to the children. And we've been doing that all these years. And I absolutely love it because, you know, when the children bring home these virginity pledges, I certainly don't want anybody to kind of wink and say, oh yeah, sure, yeah, I'll believe that when I see it. You know, I want to prepare them for that and tell them, please take it very seriously, really believe that they're sincere about this and celebrate it. And then I warn them about what different things I'm going to say to the children so that if there's some questions about it, they'll be ready to feel the answers to it. And I find that an excellent way to do it. And usually it makes sure that the parents feel that they're safe letting the children listen to me. So it works out beautifully, but no other school, a couple of them made some minor trial at doing this, but it never worked out at any other school. But it's an excellent idea. It really, it's beautiful. And I'm more than happy to do that for them.
Yeah, because we had a presentation given to us parents before. You probably know Barbara McGuigan. I don't know, but she spoke
No,
to
I
us.
didn't.
Okay, well, she's another lovely lady like you. And I thought it was a wonderful presentation that she gave the parents, because a lot of the parents don't believe that message themselves and they need to be educated.
Right. Exactly.
And share talk with their children. But
yes, it's an excellent idea. I would love to have all the schools do that, but
yeah,
they don't do it.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
What has your youngest age range been? Is it only middle school, or do you do 5th grade, or?
Well, I leave that to the principal.
Mhm.
And I did have a principal once have me speak to the 5th graders. It was a big mistake. They're much too young for that. And occasionally I'll get a 12-year-old in the 7th grade, which is really too young too. I say, you know, the maturity overall of that particular class. So I'll leave it up to you as to who should listen. I believe 8th grade is the best. They seem very relieved to have permission not to be sexually active when they go to high school. A lot of the girls say, wow, I didn't know what I was going to do. And a lot of the boys too, you know, a lot is expected of a boy sexually now. They're not supposed to just get it off. They're supposed to make the girl have a climax. And they're worried about it. And when I talk to the boys, sometimes I get the overwhelming impression that they're relieved to be let off the hook. Oh, good. I don't have to worry about making love to a girl in high school. And that's the action, that's the attitude I really want to encourage. You're too young for it. Emotionally, physically, that's why there are so many suicides among boys that are sexually active. They can't handle it. It's just too much for them in every way. It shouldn't belong in their life. And that's what I try to persuade them about. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, so I think we'll wrap up now. We do try to keep it to an hour also, because everyone's busy. we'll wrap up now. But before we do, let me tell you a little bit about our next presentation. As I said at the outset, Webinar Wednesdays are the first Wednesday of each month. And so the next one is on the first Wednesday of September, which is September 2nd. And our presenter for our next Webinar Wednesday will be Dr. Patty Jim Baggett, who is well known here in Southern California in pro-life circles. He's an obstetrician, a graduate of the University of Illinois School of Medicine. And he's going to be giving a presentation on prenatal heart defects. And so that's a very encouraging kind of thing, that through the ultrasound, defects can be uncovered, but and also dealt with, as Dr. Baggett will be explaining. And then he's also going to discuss how pro-life centers can outmarket or be more appealing than Planned Parenthood type centers because of the superior service that the pro-life centers can provide. So that will be on the first Wednesday of September 2nd. You'll all get an invitation. I hope you all can attend again. And so I'll look forward to hopefully seeing you in the first week of September 2nd. And before we sign off, though, I'd like to ask Sister Paula if she would offer a closing prayer for us. You have to unmute yourself, Sister. Sister?
Okay. Dear Lord, can't mute this prayer to you, dear Lord. I want to say hallelujah. Thank you, Lord, for all the ideas, for all the vision, for all the grace that has come through this seminar. And Lord, I ask your special blessing on every participant and on all the people that are trying to reach out to our young people. Keep them effective and keep them tuned to your spirit, that they can speak your words with power and authority. Amen.